Welcome back to Built to Ship, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders shipping real AI products into the world. I'm your host, Tyler Postal from Voker, and today I'm excited to be joined by Bailey Spell, co-founder of LedgerUp, an AI-powered contract-to-cash platform that automates billing, revenue ops, and collections so teams can move faster. Bailey, it's great to have you.
Tyler, thanks for having me, man.
Of course. Well, why don't we start with your background? What were you doing before LedgerUp?
Yeah, so I guess I'm like now kind of unorthodox in the finance and accounting space, but initially I was working at Microsoft and working on a lot of agent stuff there, but really wanted to kind of get into startups and entrepreneurship and everything, get to Silicon Valley. So after Microsoft in there, I joined as the first outside engineering hire at a startup called Respell that was then acquired by Salesforce. And then a childhood friend of mine, we had started LedgerUp there just to automate his work, his problems as like a director of finance. And so that was AI bookkeeping. But as I was the one who was like building all the stuff at the time, I was also the one having to do the stuff manually when we didn't have it built. And the biggest problem that our fast growing customers were having, and honestly, it was us as well, was a lot of stuff around the AR and the billing side of things. And so there was like, let's niche into that pain point more. And we can actually go deeper and make a lot more impact. And I actually saw like the real goal is to take billing and not see it as like a time saver or cost minimizer, more or less like I want it to be actually revenue generating because there is so much data that is there.
Very interesting. So it sounds like you guys had experience like with this pain. You had experience building, agent products before. You worked at Microsoft and probably had some of the, best exposure to techniques and
I wouldn't say it was best exposure there. I mean, because like techniques and stuff,
Okay.
things have changed. I mean, this was when I left Microsoft, it was like 3-4 years ago. It was like right when like I think it was like GPT-3 was like out. And so like things have changed initially because our first reconciliation agent was like a chain of a bunch of LLM calls. And now that's just like one agent. So it's like very, things have changed a lot. So.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah. Let's get into some of that then. So it sounds like, LedgerUp is helping, solve this very specific pain, AR billing, turning that into revenue. But how are you doing that on the AI side? What are the different AI features? And then I'd love to ask more about like how it's architected versus what you used to do when you talk about this like LLM chain.
Yeah. So we call it like it's like quote to cache, but we call it data to cache. And so there we're plugged into a lot of different data sources and sitting in the flow of communication because so we have an agent, we've named him Ari. Lives in Slack with the team and also lives in email now. That's something we released this year. And it's essentially like one agent, mono agent, whatever you want to call it. And we just store the data in like a proprietary way. And the agent just has access to all the contracts, the CRM, any of the billing financing tools, Stripe, QuickBooks, Sage, NetSuite, you name it, ChargeBee. And as well as like kind of like the finance billing email for customers and just kind of like taking in all that information that's coming in and at specific trigger points, whether that's a contract gets signed or an amendment gets signed or customer sends an email and wants to change this or customer success comes in and says, hey, actually, we need to give this person a discount. They're just sending messages to our agent. He's taking that, looking at what all the data is for that customer and then just performing that action.
Awesome. So it sounds like there's two, like if I really want to boil it down to make it simpler than it is, there's two key components here. There's the collecting and storing the data in that proprietary way. And then there's like the agent itself, like how does Ari work and what tools does Ari have access to? Which of those two, or is it both equally, would you say is the most important thing about the product being successful and accurate? Like, is it more about the data and like, hey, any agent?
I think I would also say both. I'd really say it's really like the context engineering. I think a big thing's come out recently about like context graphs and everything. I I wouldn't say we built a context graph per se, but a lot of the things that people are coming out about, like context engineering is very important. And I think that goes into how we're storing the data, because we have a bunch of background agents as well that are going through and just making sure all of the data in the different systems are linked in our database. Because that I would say is a really big behind the scenes thing that makes everything feel like magic. Because it's like, oh, how did this contract now get associated with this billing person? Or, oh, how does he know to go look at this Salesforce account or whatever? And so that's where it is, like, I would say mainly like a context data problem that makes it the most useful.
That's very interesting. It sounds like a lot of people talk about like having one main agent that orchestrates others, but it sounds like Ari's its own separate agent, but he has this like supporting team of like background agents that are cleaning up his library of resources that gives him better information to serve the customers. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of describing it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a pretty novel approach from what I've heard from folks. What have you found is like the biggest transformation in terms of like what's possible with Ari now versus when you were back at Microsoft and it was just a chain of LLM calls?
Ooh, I would say that it just works. I mean, like, I mean, like, what's, I mean, what we built over like the past like year was just definitely something you couldn't build. I think the big thing is just the reasoning that's there, because at the end of the day, if Ari can't do something, it's probably, or if he does something wrong, it's due to he just didn't have the data. So it's really a data problem for us now if he can't do anything. And so now we've just given him access to like almost as much data as we can, and we ask customers to let us have as much data as they have that would be in a billing or revenue context, and give that to Ari. And then like he will always do the best and correct action, because there was a lot of things that were happening in email that we didn't know. And then that wouldn't always get relayed back to us, because that required someone on the team to then tell Ari that. And it's an interesting human behavior thing that I've learned, is like, we have a lot of baked in knowledge over time that we just don't even realize that we know. It's just like innate, and as we've been building the systems, I'm sure a lot of other people, it's like, you just have to give it the context, and these agents can go do miraculous, amazing things. And so once we had added him to email, that was almost like we gave him, it basically was like looking at one eye and we gave him another eye. And it's like, oh, now I see all these things. I can do these things because I can just reference this email chain that happened with the customer. And so I would say that's really made it just be so much better than what could have ever happened a few years ago.
I like that analogy of like kind of they only have partial vision until you give them like the full context, like because a human has access to email and that's how they figure out the problem. They can check the email and the database, etc. I'm curious how, I think this is a challenge for anyone selling an AI product. Users have different ranges of expectations. They've pretty much been told AI is magic. And so, how do you communicate to your customers like what Ari can do and what it can't? Like, for example, maybe Ari is great when given all the right data, but your customers need to know that they need to give you all that, connect all that data to Ari for Ari to work as well. How do you communicate that? How well do customers know ahead of time and their expectations, like, or do they need to take time to work with Ari to realize, oh, okay, I see like what Ari can do and where Ari needs like more support?
I think we're still trying to get better at that over time. That's why like a big thing I'm doing is just setting out documentation and just kind of showing customers, hey, here's what power users do with them. And that really, because it's like at the end of the day, right now it's an imagination problem, because you can do so much within the revenue context. I think one is just like scope to revenue. Some people ask me to do other things, but we're like, no, it's just in this vertical here. And I just think the other thing that we've done is he now will just say if he can't do something, or he'll tell you what he can and can't do. And so when you think about it that way, that's actually like naturally just trained our users on how to do it. Because initially we didn't do that. I don't think we really ever thought about doing it, but then it actually created a lot more trust with our customers. It was like, hey, I can't do this, or hey, I ran into an issue doing this. Can you help me out? I think one thing like that our YC group partner told us about a year ago, and it didn't hit me until like the fall. She was like, this always happens with Diane.
Yeah.
But she was like, hey, you guys should show like an audit log of what's happening. We're like, why would we do that? And then once we actually did start doing that and having Ari kind of say more what he can't do, and that customers just built like a lot more trust. But we've also just doing like scope POCs with customers too really helps them. Like, hey, let's only do this niche thing first. They get comfortable, and then they naturally, it's like funny, they'll be like, oh, I want to go check everything he does. And they're like, I'm going to check every single time. And they check like 3 times. They give him like 3 really hard things. He nails it. Or like he misses it slightly, and they're like, oh, because I have this context that he doesn't have. They go give him that context. He kills it in the next time. And so, yeah, that's been like a big help there.
So key takeaway there is like, giving this visibility of audit allows the customers to build trust. And what's great is like they're building the trust on their own, right? You're not having to be there explaining everything personally, or, Ari can just kind of give them that information and they become power users over time. I also really like that idea of like showing what your power users are doing. I'm kind of thinking maybe we should do that in a newsletter every month to our customers. Like, hey, this spotlight of, anonymize the information, everything, but like, this is what the power users did. And we didn't realize.
Yeah. That's what we started doing is I just started like, a customer consent, obviously, but we'll get just anonymize like their process flow that they've kind of set up, and then kind of anonymizing how some things have gone on. And it's really helped, like, because like, oh, wait, oh, that's actually possible. And so, just trying to create revenue AGI, man. So it's just, it's
I mean, just like on the builder, those of us building AI products, we're all learning from each other. We're learning as we go in terms of what's possible and how to achieve these new outcomes. Like our users, it's easy to forget that our users are also going to like get better at using these products over time. It's not like 3 buttons they click and now I know how to use it. It's like, the use cases are pretty vast. And so it takes time to figure out how the tool works. And it's a great feedback loop for product builders for sure. I want to ask something that I like to ask like folks building AI products, like what are your interaction patterns or your interaction approach, your UX for how your users use AI? It sounds like one is chat, like through Slack and other places. Are there also workflows that run? There's the background agents you mentioned. So like the user may not know directly that's happening except through your audit log. Is there anything else that you've seen be like a good interaction pattern? Chat's an obvious one, but there's other, ways that people are giving AI to their users.
Yeah, I think one thing that one of our partners, Outset, kind of like one of our early customers, was really telling us to do, and it's been really helpful, was before Ari performs any like write action, you think before he does any billing action or anything, maybe in a CRM or something like that, maybe sends an email, it's always behind an approval button. So he's like, hey, okay, it's like I would say 95% of our interactions with our agent is just like them slacking him a message, because billing is a collaborative function within a company. Like literally we're in channels, and like people will have like, so like probably at least a quarter, if not half their company just in a specific billing channel with Ari, and they're all communicating on certain things with it. But having that like approval step there does create some friction that I think we're still trying to get better at, because some people will just forget to do the approval button. But there, though, it's like, hey, you always get final say before what the agent does. He's going to tell you exactly what he's going to do. Others are like, we have like our contract to cash workflow. That's like, I would say the main one. So it's like when a document gets signed, it kind of goes to this agentic pipeline that is just doing a lot of stuff with like linking it to a lot of things, calculating the revenue for it, determining like if there's an amendment, if there's not, how it should actually go and update, the correct billing artifacts there. And that that's the similar thing. We just try and bring all the information to our customers in Slack. I'd say that's the main thing. But I would say those are the two core ones.
I like the approval approach because, it is probably like the least friction. It is a little bit of friction, but it's the least friction you can add, and it's clicking a button. And over time, maybe you'll have settings where they could, like, once you've approved 10 times, like, I just, only for certain things do I even need approval for Ari. Maybe eventually Ari just starts to do that.
Yeah. Oh, and this is another one. We have like Ari tasks, and so when they can set up whenever other events happen, then they can trigger Ari to go perform an action. So that's either like maybe a payment failed, maybe a renewal is coming up for a customer, maybe this field in the CRM changed, now they're churned, so it needs to update the revenue model, but also needs to update what's happening in Stripe. And so that's like another agentic workflow that people will set up with us. But yeah,
are these like individual tasks? Like you're saying to next week, I want you to do this, or is it more like a recipe? Like whenever this happens, then Ari knows to do this.
Actually, there's both. There's you can actually schedule Ari as like a reminder, be like, hey, like one that happened this week. It's funny because like I was like, oh, I didn't even think you could do this, but it's because like our customers. Again, that's why it's an imagination problem. It's like our customers have all the problems. Let them do it. And one customer's like, Ari, remind me, this was Friday. Hey, send an email to this person with their W-9 on Monday. And I was like, oh, I guess you can do that. I didn't think you could, but yeah, you can. So that's one. Or they'll just, set up like, hey, when this churn event happens in Salesforce, update the revenue and update the invoicing for that customer correctly. So it's kind of like in like SOP playbook that he just kind of goes and runs.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, let's get to like the sort of production questions. So, you guys are, probably as a YC company and early AI product developers ahead of the pack in terms of like how long you've had things in production. There's a lot of companies that are just now finally shipping AI features, and they're realizing, I don't know how to keep track of if it's working as I expected. I don't know how to keep track of how my customers are using it. Like to your point, you might get surprised that they can do something you didn't even realize the bot could do. What's your approach to that, either process-wise or tools? How do you keep track of like the quality of the agents and how your users are actually expecting to use it and if they're succeeding?
Yeah, I mean, because our agent was first, we didn't really have like UI or anything. It was just like you just interacted with it in Slack. So there wasn't a lot of visibility in the beginning, but like we just built a ton of tools, internal tools, just in Slack, because all the stuff's happening in Slack. We don't want to go to like a dashboard. I don't know. Where we see the future is, right, we're trying to give people a teammate. So like, if I give you a teammate, he doesn't
make a dashboard.
Yeah. I mean, there is a dashboard that's there. Like we'll give it to you and everything. Like, or you have some internal model that you're using. We would just want to push the data there for you. But do a lot of interactions. Like we've just built a ton of internal tools that like we're keeping track of things directly in Slack when events are happening. Right, I think that's something a lot of companies do. They'll put logs in Slack. But then we've just built our own dashboards of just showing that data internally for us that I've actually been doing over the past 2-3 months, just to kind of see like who the power users are, how they're using it, how much, when. And it's pretty interesting just kind of see the graph of usage over time. Like September, billing goes down significantly because everyone's on vacation. So like if you aren't signing any deals in like August, September, don't feel bad. Like it's just a massive drop off. But it's just like interesting things like that. So it's really just a bunch of internal tools that we built.
Makes sense. What are like 1 or 2 metrics that you mentioned? Like, is that like number of billings that happen that you're talking about that fall off? Like, what are the metrics you try to track? Or is it like number of use cases that people ask Ari about?
That would be just like number of contracts we've received to bill. Like you'll see, it was like a big uptick, like right at the end of August, I believe, and then September just kind of ticked. Or I think it was not even vice versa. But we track that. We just track just how often, like app mentions that people are doing. It's a weird thing of we want people to use Ari a lot, but we also want the back and forth to be as low as possible. That's something I'm like trying to track now. Tool calls is like a big one, because it's just like that's their proxy of like what people are using him for. So we track that data, and then that's most of the stuff we track right now.
Yeah.
But that's only just going to get more.
Yeah, no, sounds like, you've had to build these things out internally, which makes sense because you're kind of at the cutting edge. And the main things are like, volume of contracts, which is just like the end results that, Ari's trying to impact, right? And then I like the distinguishing between like, you're not just a company. It's like, we just want usage to go through the roof in terms of chats. It's like, no, the better user experience is like, they use it a lot, but they don't have to like correct Ari a lot or.
Yeah. And that's gone down precipitously. I mean, like now that doesn't happen much at all anymore. But I think the bigger thing that I've told the team this year is if I ask you to do a task, right, you don't send me an approval button. So by the summer, I'm like, even for us, we actually have Ari running fully autonomously for us. We're billing. I don't even touch any of our billing. A lot of people are like, do you use it? And I'm like, yes. But that's where I think this year's kind of the year for that. And I think if an agent can't do it, it doesn't have the context, or you're just not in a niche enough space. And so that's where we're just trying to be. It's just like, hey, if we just rip the approval buttons out, he would just do everything on his own.
I love that. Amazing. Well, I know we're getting close to time. I want to put your website up on the screen. Maybe you can share a bit about who should try LedgerUp. How do they get in contact? How do they follow along? How do they meet Ari?
Yeah. So you can just find us, LedgerUp.ai. If you're just a fast growing company and have a ton of contracts and struggling to invoice them, or just dying in, billing inquiries over email, please just like get in touch. If you're CFO, controller, chief of staff, head of ops, or just like, a CEO who's like doing all this. We've, some great quotes we've gotten is, hey, I don't have to hire someone for RevOps now. So that's our goal, just kind of helping people scale without adding headcount to this. Cause we just want to help everyone become a unicorn.
Amazing. Love it. Well, thanks again, Bailey. This has been, a very interesting conversation. Appreciate you sharing both like the technical side, but also like how that ties into the end user experience. And a few things I took away were, number one is to niche down for your agent. Like tools are capable and, LLMs are a lot more advanced than they used to be. But if you're trying to have it solve too many problems, you're not going to do a good job. So you guys really niche down. You made sure Ari had all the information it needs to make the right calls, and then, have some quick but key metrics to keep track of like how are our agents performing and how are users using them, so you can iterate and develop over time. Thanks again for coming on, and I'd love to have you on as another episode in the future.
Yeah, man, of course. Just hit me up. Good luck with everything, and thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening to Built to Ship. If you're building something, go ship it. See you next time.